Kneel. The word hit Adejo like a slap, before the slap even landed. The reception area of Marble Gate Tech, Victoria Island, Lagos, was so clean it looked like it had never seen dust in its life. The floor shone like water. The air conditioning was cold. The security men stood stiff like statues. The front desk had a silver bell no one ever rang because everyone here believed they were too important to ring anything. Adejo was on the floor, not because he tripped, not because he was weak, because a woman in heels had just raised her hand, smacked his face, and the sound echoed in the wide lobby like a gunshot. His cheek burned, his ears rang. He gripped the mop handle so hard his knuckles turned white. And he actually dropped to his knees. Not on purpose, it just happened. His knees met the marble with a soft, humiliating thud. The red mopping bowl rolled away, spinning like a toy wheel, then crashed gently into the base of a flower vase. Soap water spilled, out in a foamy wave, spreading across the shiny floor like white clouds. 3 cleaners in blue overalls froze nearby. One covered her mouth, one held her chest, one blinked like she was watching a nightmare. The woman who slapped him, Jamaima, stood over him like a queen in a bad mood. She had on an expensive Ankara blazer with sharp shoulders, a white inner top, and fitted black trousers. Her handbag looked like it could pay someone's school fees for a whole year. The perfume she wore was strong and sweet, the kind that announces a person before the person speaks. And her eyes. They were full of rage, hot, proud rage. "You, useless thing," she snapped, pointing at him like he was dirt. "Who do you think you are to be walking around here and you didn't greet me? Is your mouth blocked?" Adejo's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, he really did. But something heavy sat on his tongue, not fear, not exactly. It was something else, a mix of shock and a strange sadness, because he didn't expect this level of hatred from a stranger. Jemima kicked the mopping bowl again. The bowl jumped and hit Adejo's knee. The foam splashed his uniform. "Look at this place," she shouted, her voice rising. "Are you mad? You want to make this floor dirty? Are you blind?" Adejo stared at the foam slowly spreading. His chest rose and fell. His mind was racing. "Stay calm. Don't react. Don't reveal yourself. Not yet." But the cleaners were shaking. One of them, a short woman with tired eyes, whispered, "Madam, please, he just resumed today." Jemima turned sharply. "And so? Is that my problem? All of you, listen well. Anybody that wants to behave anyhow in this company should pack their things and go. I don't tolerate nonsense." She looked back at Adejo. "Kneel properly. Let me see you kneel well." Adejo's fingers tightened around the mop handle. A small part of him wanted to stand up, look her in the eye and say, "Do you know who I am?" But he didn't, because he wasn't there as Adejo Adebayo, the man who just returned from the United States after 12 years. He wasn't there as the new owner of the company. Today he was just a cleaner, a poor man in a worn-out blue overall. He forced air into his lungs and said softly, "I'm sorry, Ma." That was all he got to say, because Jemima leaned down and hissed, "If you ever disrespect me again, I will make sure you regret it. You hear me?" Then she straightened up, flipped her hair like she was brushing away his existence, and walked toward the elevator with loud, confident steps. Her heels sounded like a drumbeat of pride. Adejo remained on his knees, his cheeks still stung. His eyes were wet, not full crying, but wet enough that if he blinked too hard, tears would fall. The lobby felt too big, too bright, too exposed. One of the cleaners rushed to him. "Auntie Bisi," the others called her because she looked like someone's strict but kind auntie. She crouched beside Adejo carefully, like she didn't want to touch a wound. "Guy." "Sorry," she whispered, "that's Jemima. She's like that." Adejo swallowed. His voice came out rough, like sandpaper. "Does she do this often?" Auntie Bisi looked around nervously, then lowered her voice. "She has slapped a security man before. She insulted the HR lady last month and nothing happened. She is close to big people." Adejo stared at the elevator Jemima entered. "Close to big people," he repeated quietly. Auntie Bisi nodded quickly. "The staff fear her, even the managers. She behaves like the company belongs to her." Adejo's eyes stayed on the elevator doors. He watched them close, then he finally pushed himself up from the floor. His knees hurt. His pride hurt more, but he didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't say his real name. He only picked up the mop again and mopped the foam slowly, gently, like the foam was not soap water, but something sacred. The other cleaners watched him like they were expecting him to explode. But he didn't. He just kept mopping. And while he mopped, his mind was building a list. Not a revenge list, a truth list. Who greets the cleaners? Who ignores them? Who kicks them? Who helps them? Who feels joy when they humiliate someone? He had one job, to know what kind of people were inside the company he just bought. And Jemima had just introduced herself very loudly. Earlier that morning, the sun was still soft when Adejo arrived at the building. He had parked a few streets away near Ajose Adeogun, where hawkers sold bottled water and puff-puff to office workers rushing for the day. He stood by his car for a moment and watched Lagos wake up. He watched a bus conductor shout, "VI, VI, enter with your change ooh." He watched a woman in a yellow apron arrange bread in a small tray beside a kiosk. He watched a man in a suit adjust his tie with shaky hands like someone about to face a lion. And Adejo? Adejo wore a faded blue cleaner's uniform that wasn't even his size. It was too big at the shoulders and too tight at the waist. He had rubbed dust on the knees to make it look older. He wore cheap rubber sandals. He didn't look like a man who once sat in boardrooms in Houston discussing software security contracts. He looked like someone who took 2 buses to work. He took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "Let's see what I'm walking into." His phone buzzed, a message from Mr. Collard, the lawyer who helped him buy the company. "Sir, welcome again. Remember, your identity is confidential until you decide to announce. The staff don't know the ownership has changed yet." Adejo typed back, "Yes, I'm going in now." Then he slipped his phone into his pocket and walked into the building like nobody. Like a ghost. Like a worker, no, one wanted to see. The security at the gate didn't even look at his face properly. One waved him in without greeting. The other stared at his sandals and smiled like it was funny. Inside, the reception was quiet. A receptionist with neat lashes and a bored expression was tapping her nails on the desk. Adejo approached politely. "Good morning," he said. She glanced at him, then looked away. "Cleaner? Report to facility office, second door after the staircase." No welcome, no smile, just instructions. Adejo nodded. "Thank you." And as he walked away, he heard the receptionist mumble under her breath, "These cleaners always disturb person." Adejo's mouth twitched, not a smile, more like pain. So this is how it starts. The facility office smelled like bleach and old paper. A thin man with a pot belly and a loud voice sat behind a desk. His name tag said Mr. Olowo. He didn't stand, he didn't greet, he only pointed at a mop. "You. New. Guy. What's your name?" "Adejo," Adejo replied. Mr. Olowo flipped through a paper file lazily. "You people that come from village, you think this is easy work?" Adejo's jaw tightened. "I'm ready to work, sir," he said calmly. Mr. Olowo snorted. "Work? Okay. If you can survive this place, you can survive anywhere. Start from reception. That place must shine. You hear?" Adejo nodded. As he carried the mop and bowl out, he heard Mr. Olowo call after him. "And if Jemima enters there, don't look at her anyhow. That one is problem." Adejo paused slightly. "Jemima?" he asked. Mr. Olowo looked up sharply, like he had said too much. He scratched his head. "Just do your work." Adejo walked out, but his brain held on to the name. Jemima. After cleaning the mess, Adejo returned the bowl to a corner and leaned lightly on the mop handle. Auntie Bessie stood beside him, still angry. "That girl no get home training," she whispered. "To slap. Person like that. For greeting." Adejo's eyes stayed calm, but his voice was quiet. "It's not about greeting," he said. Auntie Bessie blinked. "Eh?" Adejo looked at her. "It's about power. Some people feel powerful only when they make others feel small." Auntie Bessie stared at him like she wasn't sure if a cleaner was supposed to talk like that. Adejo noticed her reaction and softened his tone. Sorry, he added quickly. I just didn't expect it. Auntie Bisi sighed. You will see worse in this company, I'm telling you. Adejo didn't answer, because at that moment the receptionist's phone rang. She picked up quickly. Hello? Yes, ma. Yes, she just entered. Okay. She hung up and looked at Adejo with sudden fear in her eyes. You, she snapped. Did you do something to Jemima? Adejo frowned. No. The receptionist swallowed. Because she just called me. She asked for your name. Auntie Bisi's mouth dropped open. Adejo's heart made a small jump. Not from fear, from curiosity. Why does she want my name? The receptionist tapped her pen nervously. If she reports you, they will send you away today. Auntie Bisi grabbed Adejo's sleeve. Ah, Adejo, please, go and apologize to her. Just go and beg. That's how we survive here. Adejo looked at Auntie Bisi's hand holding his sleeve. Her hand was rough, tired, real. He could see the years of swallowing insults just to keep salary. He could feel her fear. He wanted to tell her, don't worry, I'm not the one in danger. But he couldn't. Not yet. So he only nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I'll handle it. Auntie Bisi exhaled in relief, but Adejo's eyes hardened slightly as he stared at the elevator again. Because in his mind, one thing was clear. If Jemima was bold enough to slap a cleaner on his first day, then she had probably done worse things behind closed doors. And that meant this company was not just a workplace, it was a small kingdom. And Jemima believed she was the queen. Adejo gripped the mop tighter. Then he heard something else. A quiet voice behind him. A male voice. Low. Urgent. Excuse me, are you the new cleaner? Adejo turned. A young man in a white long-sleeve shirt, tucked into black trousers, stood near the glass door. His face was tense, like he had been watching everything. Yes, Adejo replied cautiously. The young man leaned closer and whispered, Please, be careful. Jemima is not just arrogant, she is dangerous, and she has eyes everywhere. Adejo stared at him. Who are you? Adejo asked. The young man hesitated, then said softly, My name is Tomiwa. I work in accounts. He glanced around, then lowered his voice even more. Today's slap is small. There are things happening in this company. Things you shouldn't see. Adejo's heartbeat slowed, his eyes sharpened. What kind of things? He asked. Tomiwa opened his mouth. Then the elevator dinged, and Jemima stepped out again. This time, she wasn't alone. She was walking with a tall man in a suit, and they were laughing. Jemima's eyes landed on Adejo immediately. Her laughter stopped. Her lips curled. She pointed at Adejo like she was pointing at a cockroach. Tomiwa froze. Jemima started walking toward them. Slowly, like a lioness walking toward trapped prey. Adejo didn't move. He just stood there with his mop. And as Jemima got closer, Tomiwa whispered with trembling lips, She knows you heard me. Adejo's chest tightened. Jemima stopped right in front of Adejo and smiled, cold, sweet, fake. Then she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, So, you're already forming friendship? Cleaner that just resumed today. Adejo opened his mouth to answer, but Jemima suddenly reached for his name tag. She yanked it, hard. The tiny pin scratched his shirt. Then she looked at the tag and laughed. Adejo, she read out like it was funny. She stepped closer until her perfume filled his nose. And she whispered, so only he could hear, I will deal with you. Adejo stared straight back at her. No shaking, no begging, just silence. Jemima's smile faded for a second because something about his calmness confused her. Then she turned sharply, dropped his name tag on the wet floor, and walked away again with the man in the suit. Tomiwa was pale. Auntie Bisi whispered, Jesus. Adejo bent down slowly, picked up the name tag from the wet foam, and wiped it on his uniform. His face stayed calm, but inside something cold moved. Not hatred, not anger. Something like decision. Because now it wasn't only about a slap. It was about what kind of people were running the place he had just bought. And Jemima. Jemima had just promised war. Adejo clipped the name tag back on. Then he looked at Tomiwa and said quietly, Meet me by the back gate during lunch. Tomiwa blinked. Why? Adejo's voice was low, steady. Because I want to hear everything you were about to tell me. Before Jemima came. Tomiwa swallowed. Then he nodded slowly. And as Jemima's laughter echoed from the hallway, Adejo stared ahead and thought, tomorrow, someone will walk into this company as the CEO, and when that happens, everybody will learn what respect truly means. But first, he needed to find out what Jemima was hiding. That afternoon, Adejo went to clean the hallway near the executive floor. As he mopped, he heard Jemima's voice inside an office, sharp and excited. And then he heard a second voice. A familiar voice from Adejo's past, a voice he hadn't heard in years. The voice said, "Make sure the new owner never shows his face here. If he steps into this company, everything we built will collapse." Adejo froze. His mop stopped moving. His blood ran cold, because he recognized that voice, and he knew one terrifying thing: someone inside Marble Gate Tech knew he was coming, and they were already planning to stop him. Adejo did not move. The mop stayed frozen in his hands, the wet strands pressed against the shiny floor like they were holding their breath too. Inside the office, the voices continued. Lower now, careful, dangerous. "You promised me this company was safe," the familiar voice said again, irritated. "Now you're telling me there's a new owner." Jemima laughed softly, not her loud, proud laugh. This one was different, smooth, controlled. "Relax," she replied. "Owners don't show up just like that. And even if he does, we'll manage him. Like we manage everyone else." Adejo's heart beat once. Hard. Manage him. The man sighed. "You don't understand. This Adejo Adebayo is not small. I heard he made his money in the US cybersecurity. Smart man, quiet, dangerous." Adejo closed his eyes for half a second. "So you remember me?" Jemima scoffed. "All these foreign returned men are the same. They talk big. When they enter Lagos, reality humbles them." Adejo's jaw tightened. The man hesitated. "Still, be careful. If he walks in here and starts asking questions—" "He won't," Jemima cut in sharply. "Because before he even settles down, he'll already think this company is peaceful. Loyal staff. No problems." Adejo felt a cold chill slide down his spine. Peaceful. Loyal. Built on fear. The office door suddenly creaked, like someone had shifted their chair. Adejo reacted instantly. He dragged the mop forward and resumed cleaning, bending low, scrubbing harder than before. His shoulders rounded, his head dropped. Cleaner posture, invisible posture. The door opened. Jemima stepped out first, adjusting her blazer. The man followed, tall, light-skinned, early 40s, wearing a gold wristwatch that screamed money. His eyes were sharp, watchful. They stopped when they saw Adejo. Jemima smiled slowly. "You again." Adejo lowered his head respectfully. "Good afternoon, Ma." The man looked him over from head to toe, then frowned. "Is he deaf? Why is he standing here?" Jemima waved it off. "Just a cleaner. They're everywhere." The man's eyes lingered on Adejo for one extra second. Too long, like he was trying to remember something. Then he turned away. "Let's go." As they walked off, Jemima leaned close to the man and whispered, loud enough for Adejo to hear, "Don't worry. People like this don't matter." The words hit harder than the slap. Adejo kept scrubbing, but inside his chest, something settled into place. A truth. This was not just arrogance, this was rot. Lunch break, back gate. The back gate of Marble Gate Tech faced a narrow street behind the building. A suya spot sat at the corner, smoke curling into the air. A woman sold cold sachet water from a cooler. Delivery bikes passed constantly. This was where workers came to breathe. Adejo stood beside the wall, pretending to adjust his uniform. He waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Just when he thought Tomiwa wouldn't come, he saw him. Walking fast, shoulders tense, eyes scanning the area like someone afraid of being followed. Tomiwa stopped in front of Adejo. "You shouldn't have called me," he whispered. Adejo met his eyes. "You still came." Tomiwa exhaled shakily. "Because I don't sleep well anymore." Adejo's face softened. "Talk to me." Tomiwa swallowed. Jemima controls more than reception, she controls information. She knows which files disappear, which payments delay, which staff get promoted or pushed out. Adejo listened quietly. She's close to the former owners, Tomiwa continued. They used her as their eyes. Even after selling the company, she stayed. Powerful, untouchable. Adejo nodded slowly. And the man in the office with her just now? Tomiwa's eyes widened. You heard that? I heard enough, Adejo said calmly. Tomiwa lowered his voice further. That's Mr. Daniels, former operations director. He's not supposed to be here anymore, but he still comes, gives instructions, moves money. Adejo's fingers curled slightly. So the sale didn't end his influence. No, Tomiwa said, it just changed the shape of it. Adejo looked toward the tall building, its glass reflecting the Lagos sun. How many people know? He asked. Tomiwa shook his head. Most staff just want salary. They don't ask questions. Those who did left. Adejo turned back to him. Why are you still here? Tomiwa laughed bitterly. Because I need this job. My father is sick. My younger sister just entered college. I can't afford courage. Adejo felt something heavy press against his chest. He nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. Tomiwa frowned. Why do you care? You're just a cleaner. Adejo held his gaze, and for the first time, his eyes changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough to make Tomiwa pause. I care, Adejo said simply, because some places need light, even small light. Tomiwa stared at him, confused. Before he could ask more, Adejo added gently, From today, watch, listen. But don't put yourself in danger. Tomiwa hesitated, then nodded. Okay. As Tomiwa walked away, Adejo whispered to himself, They're already afraid of the CEO they haven't met. Good. That evening, Adejo stayed late. He volunteered to clean the executive floor, alone. The cleaners warned him. That place is sensitive. He smiled faintly. I'll be careful. Inside the quiet hallway, he worked slowly, eyes sharp. He noted which offices had locked cabinets, which ones had cameras facing inward, which doors were always closed. When he reached the HR office, he noticed something strange. A file on the desk, half open. The name on the file made his chest tighten. His hand stilled. Slowly, carefully, he leaned closer. The report wasn't complete, but it had details. His school, his time in the US, even his first business deal. Someone was already investigating him. Before he officially arrived, Adejo straightened. A sound echoed behind him. Footsteps. He turned. Jamaima stood at the end of the hallway, arms folded, smile sharp. You're working very late, she said. Adejo bowed his head slightly. Yes, Ma. She walked closer, her heels clicking slowly. You cleaners are very curious, she added lightly, always ending up where you shouldn't be. Adejo stepped away from the desk. I was just cleaning. Jamaima stopped inches from him, her voice dropped. Listen to me carefully. This company rewards loyalty, but it punishes people who poke their nose into matters above their level. Adejo met her eyes calmly. I understand, Ma. For a brief moment, something flickered, in her eyes. Doubt. Then it vanished. Good, she said, turning away. Don't forget your place. As she walked off, Adejo stared at the file again. So this is how they play it. Fear, control, prevention. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone and snapped a single photo of the file. No flash. Silent. Then he closed it neatly and returned it exactly as he found it. At home, in his small rented apartment in Yaba, Adejo sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. He replayed the slap in his mind, the kneeling, the mop, Jemima's voice. Then he replayed the office conversation, the file, the fear in Tomiwa's eyes. He exhaled slowly. This is worse than I thought, he murmured. His phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Collade. Sir, are you okay? Any updates? Adejo typed back, yes, the company has deep issues, internal sabotage. One staff member, Jamaima, is central. 3 dots appeared. Then, should we intervene? Adejo stared at the screen, then typed, Not yet. Tomorrow I want to see how far their pride goes. He placed the phone down, and for the first time since the slap, a small, controlled smile touched his lips. The next morning, Adejo arrived early again, but today something was different. Whispers followed him, eyes lingered. Some staff looked at him with pity, others with curiosity. Jemima passed him without a word, but her jaw was tight. By 10:17 a.m., the receptionist's phone rang. Her face changed. She stood up straight. "Attention, everyone," she announced, voice trembling. "There's a message from the board." Adejo kept mopping. The receptionist swallowed. "The new CEO will be arriving today." Silence fell over the lobby. You could hear the air conditioning hum. Adejo's hands slowed. Jemima froze near the elevator. The receptionist continued, "All senior staff are to report to the conference room in 30 minutes. Jemima turned sharply. Her eyes landed on Adejo. For the first time, there was no anger in them, only fear. And as Adejo gently pushed the mop across the floor, he thought calmly, "You told me to kneel yesterday. Today, you'll learn how power really works." As the cleaners gathered their tools, Jemima walked toward Adejo slowly. Her voice was low, urgent. "Cleaner," she said, forcing a smile. "What's your name again?" Adejo looked up, paused, then answered softly, "Adejo." Jemima nodded quickly. "Good. Adejo, do me a favor. When the CEO arrives, if he asks about me—" She stopped herself, swallowed. "Say good things." Adejo stared at her, silent, and in that silence, Jemima suddenly realized something was very wrong. Adejo did not answer Jemima. Not immediately. He looked at her the way people look at a cracked glass, careful, quiet, trying not to cut themselves. Jemima's forced smile trembled. "Did you hear me?" she asked again, lowering her voice. "Just say I'm hard-working, loyal, that's all." Adejo tilted his head slightly. "Why?" he asked softly. The question landed badly. Jemima blinked. "What kind of question is that?" Adejo leaned on his mop. "If you've always done right, why would you be worried about what a cleaner says?" Her lips parted, then closed. For a second her mask slipped. Fear showed, raw, ugly. She straightened quickly. "Don't be stupid," she snapped, regaining her sharp tone. "Just mind your work." She turned and walked away fast, too fast for someone confident. Auntie Bisi rushed over immediately. "Ha, what did she say to you?" she whispered. Adejo shook his head. "Nothing important." Auntie Bisi sighed. "This company today, something heavy is in the air." Adejo nodded slowly. "Yes, something heavy." By noon, the building had changed. Managers adjusted ties. Secretaries whispered urgently. Security men stood straighter. The conference room lights were turned on for the first time in weeks. Adejo watched it all from the reception area as he wiped the glass doors. Then, outside, black cars arrived. Not flashy, just clean, quiet, powerful. 3 cars, engines turned off almost at the same time. The first security man swallowed. The second adjusted his cap. The receptionist stood up so fast her chair almost fell. Sir, the CEO has arrived," she whispered into the phone. Adejo kept wiping the glass. He could feel eyes on him. He didn't look up. The doors opened. Footsteps entered. Not rushed, not proud, measured. Adejo finished wiping the last part of the glass. Then he stepped back. The man who walked in was tall, well-dressed, calm. His face was serious but not angry, just observant. The receptionist bowed slightly. "Good afternoon, sir." "Good afternoon," the man replied. Adejo recognized the voice. It was Mr. Kolade. Behind him were 2 other men, board members. Adejo picked up his mop and moved aside respectfully. Mr. Kollade's eyes met his, just for a second. No recognition, no greeting, just a silent understanding. "It's time." "Where is Jemima?" one of the board members asked. The receptionist hesitated. She's in the conference room." "Good," Mr. Khaled said. "Let's not waste time." They walked past. Adejo exhaled slowly. His hands shook just a little. Not fear, Anticipation. Jemima stood when the men entered. Too fast. Her chair scraped loudly. "Good afternoon, sirs," she said brightly. "Welcome. I'm Jemima. I handle—" Mr. Collade raised a hand gently. "We know who you are." Her smile tightened. Everyone sat, except Jemima. No one told her to sit. She sat anyway. Mr. Collade folded his hands. "We'll keep this brief. The ownership of Marblegate Tech has officially changed." Murmurs filled the room. Jemima nodded quickly. "Yes, yes. We've been informed. We're loyal to whoever the board new CEO," Mr. Collade continued calmly, "has been observing the company quietly for some time." Jemima's throat went dry. "Observing? How long?" she asked before she could stop herself. Mr. Collade smiled slightly. "Long enough." Silence. One board member leaned forward. "The CEO believes character matters more than CVs." Another added, "How staff treat those below them tells us everything." Jemima felt sweat gather at her back. "Below them?" Mr. Collade stood. "Please," he said, turning toward the door, "invite the cleaner named Adejo." Jemima's heart slammed. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The door opened. Adejo walked in, still in his worn-out blue overall, still holding his mop. The room went still. Jemima's face drained of color. Adejo stopped in front of the table. Mr. Collade stepped aside. "Gentlemen," he said, "meet Mr. Adejo Adebayo, the new CEO of Marblegate Tech." The room exploded in gasps. Someone dropped a pen. A chair creaked loudly. Jemima stood up, then her knees buckled. She fell. Hard. Her handbag slipped from her shoulder. "Sir," she cried, voice breaking, "sir, please." Adejo looked at her, not with anger, not with joy. With calm, the calm of someone who has seen truth. She crawled forward slightly. "I deserve anything. Sack me. Arrest me. Please, I'm sorry." Adejo said nothing. The silence felt heavy, painful. Then he spoke. "Stand up." Jemima shook her head violently. "No, I can't." "I said," Adejo repeated gently, "stand up." She obeyed. Trembling, Adejo removed the name tag from his uniform, placed it on the table. "I will not sack you today," he said. Jemima sobbed. Relief flooded her face, but it didn't last. "You will work directly under me," Adejo continued, "as my personal assistant." The room froze again. Jemima looked up slowly. Sir? You will arrive before me. Leave after. Me. Bow when you greet. Learn patience. Learn respect." Her mouth opened, closed. "You wanted someone to kneel," Adejo added quietly. "Now you will learn what humility looks like." Tears streamed down Jemima's face. "Yes, sir," she whispered. Adejo turned to the board. Meeting adjourned. Word spread like fire. The cleaners stared at Adejo in disbelief. Auntie Bissie's hands shook. You're the CEO?" Adejo smiled faintly. "Yes." She burst into tears. I'm sorry we didn't know." Adejo stopped her gently. "You did nothing wrong." He looked around the lobby, the shiny floor, the silent desks, the fearful faces. Then he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else, "This is just the beginning." As Adejo walked toward his new office, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A familiar voice laughed softly on the other end. "You exposed Jemima," the voice said. "Impressive." Adejo's eyes hardened. "Who is this?" he asked. The voice replied calmly, "The man you heard behind the wall. And trust me, this company will not be easy to clean." The call ended. Adejo stared at the phone, slowly, carefully. Because now he knew one thing for sure. Jemima was not the real enemy, and the real battle was just beginning. Jemima arrived at the office before sunrise. Not because she wanted to impress anyone, because she was afraid to be late. She stood outside Adejo's office, hands clasped, back straight, eyes lowered. The expensive confidence she once wore like perfume was gone. In its place sat something fragile, something new. Adejo noticed immediately. "Good morning, sir," Jemima said, bowing slightly. The word sir felt heavy in her mouth. Adejo didn't answer at first. He placed his briefcase on the desk, took off his jacket, and looked at the city through the glass wall. Lagos was already awake. Horns, movement, pressure. Finally, he turned. "Good morning, Jemima." Her shoulders relaxed a little. "Today," Adejo said calmly, "you'll follow me everywhere. Meetings, calls, silence." "Yes, sir." They started with emails. Jemima typed fast, efficient. She knew her job, that much was clear. But every time Adejo stood, she stood too. Every time he spoke, she listened like her life depended on it. And maybe it did. By midday, Adejo asked casually, "Who approves vendor payments?" Jemima hesitated, just half a second. "Operations," she replied, "with recommendations." "From who?" Adejo asked. Jemima swallowed. "From Mr. Daniels." Adejo nodded slowly. "The man who no longer works here." "Yes, sir." Adejo leaned back. "Why does he still control money?" Silence. The air conditioning hummed. Jemima's voice came out small. "Because he helped some people get their jobs, and he knows things." "What kind of things?" She looked at the floor. "Things that can destroy careers." Adejo felt the weight of it settle. Blackmail, fear, control. "So when you slapped me," Adejo said quietly, "you thought I was just another nobody." Tears filled Jemima's eyes. "Yes." "Why?" She sniffed. "Because I learned early that power protects you, and weakness gets crushed." Adejo stood, walked to the window. "Power without character," he said softly, "is the most dangerous thing in a company." He turned back to her. "You will help me fix this." Jemima looked up sharply. "How?" "By telling the truth," Adejo replied, "and by facing the people you helped silence." Her lips trembled. "They'll come for me." Adejo met her eyes. "They're already coming for both of us." Right then, Adejo's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He answered. The voice was calm, mocking. "You've started shaking the table, CEO," the voice said. "Be careful, some things fall on people." Adejo's jaw tightened. "I'm ready," the voice chuckled. "Good, because tomorrow your loyal staff will choose sides." The call ended. Adejo looked at Jemima. Her face had gone pale. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. Adejo picked up his jacket. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "we find out who's been kneeling and who's been standing on them." Jemima nodded slowly. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over Lagos. Not rain yet, just a warning. The morning came with rain, not the gentle kind, the kind that beats on glass and makes people uneasy. By 9 a.m., the conference room was full. Every senior staff member sat stiffly, eyes darting. Some avoided Adejo's gaze. Some watched Jemima, who now sat quietly at the end of the table. No Ankara blazer, no loud perfume, no crossed legs of confidence. Just a plain blouse, hands folded. Adejo stood. "Thank you for coming," he said calmly. "Today is not about punishment. It's about truth." No one breathed. Adejo pressed a button. The screen lit up. Payment records, emails, voice notes. Mr. Daniels's name appeared again and again. Gasps filled the room. Adejo spoke slowly. This company was run on fear. People were promoted because they knew someone. Others were silenced because they knew too much. He paused. "I walked these halls as a cleaner. I was slapped. I was ordered to kneel. And many of you saw it and looked away." Some heads dropped. Others burned with shame. Adejo turned to Jemima. "Stand." She stood, trembling. "She represents what unchecked power does to a person," Adejo said, "but she also represents something else." He looked around the room. "Change." Murmurs followed. Adejo continued, "Mr. Daniels has been reported. Accounts frozen. Authorities informed." A collective exhale swept the room. Then Adejo said the words no one expected. "This company will not fire people for past fear. But from today, character is the new currency." He looked at the cleaners standing by the door. "They will be trained, promoted, respected." Auntie Bisi burst into tears. Adejo turned back to Jemima. "You will keep your job, but your pride stays here." Jemima nodded, crying openly. "I understand." Adejo stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Never forget how it felt to be powerless," she whispered. "I won't." Adejo faced the room one last time. "Marblegate Tech will rise again, but only if we rise together." Silence. Then applause, not loud, but real. Later that evening, Adeyo returned to the reception area alone. The floor shone again, but this time it felt different. He stood where he once knelt and smiled softly, because power had finally been cleaned properly. The world is smaller than pride makes it seem. Be careful who you push to the floor. Tomorrow, they might be standing over you, deciding whether to lift you up. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.